have to love today's gospel lesson from Matthew. It is so full of craziness and foolhardiness and fear and grace, and it's so full of truth. It may be the perfect story for anyone facing challenging times. I think it's perfect for us right now. Right now, the world is full of uncertainty and concern. In New York State, our COVID numbers look good, and we've gotten permission to reopen schools next month in whatever ways our local officials feel is safe and, of course, in line with CDC guidelines. Of course, parents can keep their children at home. Of course, parents need to go back to work. Of course, we have to watch out for the safety of our teachers and their families. Of course, schools will shut down if the illness gets worse. Of course, no one knows what will happen next. We're in the midst of the most unusual and possibly the most important presidential election ever. No one knows what will happen between now and January 2021, when the winner of the election will be inaugurated. These two things, the virus and the election, have important consequences for our future. We've lost too many people and will most likely lose many more before January of next year. The pandemic has laid bare the systemic failures in our country, in healthcare, childcare, wages, the racial inequality, the economic inequality. What happens next? How we handle this pandemic and how we vote in November will determine what our country will be like for generations to come. Will we successfully work together towards a more just and equitable nation? Will we come together to battle this new disease? And whom should you call for your next rector? Can we trust God to send someone who fits, who will love and care for all the people of St. James, who will lead you into your next phase of life with grace and compassion and faithfulness? I hope and expect this is the easiest of the storms you face, because there are storms all around us, and our boat is very small, and God can seem pretty far away. What are we to do? Here are a few of the things that our gospel teaches us about storms and boats and faith. Jesus is with us, even when we can't see him clearly. The disciples saw something, or thought they saw something out on the water, and even when they were sure they saw something, they weren't sure what or who it was. Just remember, it's Jesus. Jesus is there in the midst of the storm. We may not see him clearly, but he is there. Another thing, if you feel compelled to volunteer to do something, if you just blurt out something that you think should be done, well, Jesus will take you up on it, and probably the rest of the congregation. Peter opens his mouth and says the most ridiculous, wonderful thing he could have said. If it's really you, Jesus, ask me to walk on the water towards you. Well, now, I imagine that there was a moment of total silence among the disciples when Peter said that out loud. Was Peter full of faith or foolishness? Was there any proof that if it wasn't Jesus, the specter's response would be different? Wouldn't a specter, a ghost, still say, "Sure, come on out here with me"? Weren't there myths about sirens who lured sailors to their deaths? I imagine that most of the disciples thought Peter was just crazy, and the other fishermen in the boat got ready to throw a net out for him so that he wouldn't drown. On the face of it, Peter's suggestion does seem crazy. And yet, his instinct is right, isn't it? When things are going badly, someone needs to do something. Sometimes we volunteer to help with some ridiculously audacious plan, and people expect us to follow through, even if on the face of it, the plan is crazy. Sometimes when the storm is bad and everyone is stuck on a boat and we think we might see Jesus out there somewhere, somebody needs to get out of the boat. Maybe more than just one of us. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's me. Crazier than Peter's plan is the fact that by keeping his eyes on Jesus, he is able to walk on that stormy water. He doesn't drown. He does the impossible. It's only when he takes his eyes off of Jesus and looks around at the storm around him and the wind and the impossibility of what he is doing that he gets into trouble. I don't really need to explain that part, do I? We can focus on the turmoil around us and get caught up in it, or we can focus on God and keep our eyes on Jesus and accomplish the impossible. If we should happen to lose faith, take our eyes off of him and start to become overwhelmed, well, all we need to do is call out for help, and Jesus will reach out. He'll be there. I notice that the storm does not subside until Jesus is in the boat with them. I know that in the story, Jesus sent them off without him so that he could have some time alone to pray. It's not clear to me if the storm came first before Jesus set out to meet them on the water, or whether he was on the way when the storm came up. Anyway, they were out there on the boat too far from land, and the storm came up, and Jesus has to go out on the water to meet them. It's true for us that storms occur, whether Jesus feels near to us or very far distant. We see from this story that Jesus did not abandon the disciples to the storm. He was there, on his way, present with them, even when they couldn't see or feel or hear him. Just like God is here with us on the way, even when we can't see or feel or hear God. We are not abandoned. We will eventually find that Jesus is in the boat with us. The storm will eventually be stilled. All shall be well. The storms are upon us, swirling around us. What are we going to do? We are going to believe that God is present. Even when we don't see or feel or hear God's voice, we're going to have faith. And we're going to get out of the boat. You and I are going to have to get out of our safety zones, our boats, and walk on the water, always keeping our eyes on Jesus. And if we get distracted, if we take our eyes off and start to feel overwhelmed, we are going to ask for help. And then we will walk with Jesus right on top of the water, doing the impossible until we get back to the boat and the storm passes by, because it will eventually pass by. Imagine the stories we will have to tell once this is all over. Amen.